You show up to a small airport on the edge of town on a Saturday morning. The building is not what you expected. It is not sleek or modern or impressive. It is a single-story structure with faded carpet and a front desk covered in logbooks and pamphlets about introductory flights. There is a vending machine in the corner that hasn't been restocked in weeks. A ceiling fan wobbles overhead. You're 19 years old, or maybe 35, or maybe 52. It doesn't matter. Everyone starts here. Everyone starts in the same fluorescent-lit lobby, filling out the same forms, and handing over a credit card for the first of many payments that will quietly rearrange your entire financial life. Your instructor is a 23-year-old kid who has 400 hours of flight time and is using this job as a stepping stone to the airlines. He doesn't tell you that. He shakes your hand and walks you out to the ramp where a Cessna 172 is parked. The plane is older than you are. The paint is chipped. One of the wheel fairings is cracked. It smells like gas and vinyl and decades of nervous sweat from people sitting in the exact seat you're about to sit in. You climb in. The cockpit is smaller than you imagined. The instruments look like they belong in a museum. Your instructor runs through the pre-flight checklist like he's done it 1,000 times, because he has. You taxi to the runway. Your hands are shaking. He tells you to push the throttle forward. The engine roars, the ground blurs, and then the wheels leave the pavement, and you are flying. And for about 4 seconds, everything in your life makes sense in a way it never has before. That feeling costs you $180 an hour. You will chase it for years. You fly twice a week if you can afford it. Sometimes once a week. Sometimes you go 3 weeks without flying because rent was due, or your car broke down, or the weather was bad for 9 days straight. Every gap costs you. Skills decay fast in the beginning. You spend the first 20 minutes of every lesson relearning what you forgot since the last one. You practice takeoffs and landings until the pattern feels like a prison. Climb to pattern altitude, turn crosswind, turn downwind, reduce power, add flaps, turn base, turn final, flare, land. Again, again, again. Your landings are terrible. You bounce. You float. You slam the wheels into the pavement so hard your spine compresses. Your instructor grabs the controls more often than you'd like to admit. You go home and watch YouTube videos of other students landing perfectly, and you wonder if you're the only person who's ever been this bad at something they want this badly. Then one morning, your instructor unbuckles his seatbelt, opens the door, and steps out of the airplane. He looks at you and says, "Take it around the pattern 3 times." He closes the door. You are alone in an aircraft for the first time. The right seat is empty. No one is going to save you. You taxi to the runway, and your legs are trembling on the rudder pedals, and you push the throttle forward, and the plane lifts off lighter than it's ever felt because his weight is gone. And you climb into the sky completely alone. And you realize that no one on the ground can help you now. You land. It isn't pretty, but you land. You taxi back, and he's standing on the ramp grinning. And you climb out, and he shakes your hand, and someone cuts the back of your shirt with scissors because that's the tradition. And you stand there in the sun holding a piece of your own shirt, feeling something you will spend the rest of your career trying to feel again. The private pilot. You have your certificate, 60 hours in your logbook, maybe 70. You passed the check ride with a designated pilot examiner who asked you questions about weather and airspace and emergency procedures for 2 hours on the ground, and then watched you fly for another hour and a half while scribbling on a clipboard. You made 1 mistake on the oral and 2 in the air, and he passed you anyway, because the mistakes were minor and your recovery was good. You are now legally allowed to carry passengers. You are also acutely aware of how little you actually know. You take your friends flying. They're excited. You're terrified. Not of crashing, of looking incompetent. You plan the flight obsessively. You check the weather 4 times. You brief your passengers on the seat belts and the doors and what to do if something goes wrong. You taxi out and take off. And your friend in the right seat says, "This is amazing." And you feel like a god for about 15 minutes until you hit turbulence and your passenger turns green. And you land at a small airport and they throw up in the parking lot. Welcome to general aviation. You fly on weekends. You fly to breakfast at airports with diners on the field. You fly to small towns you've never visited. You fly at sunset because the light at altitude is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen and no photograph captures it. You are burning money at an alarming rate and you don't care because every time you climb above the clouds, you feel like you've escaped something. The commute, The cubicle, the ordinary weight of being a person on the ground. Up here, you are something else. You know this feeling is temporary. You know the bills are real. You know 200 hours of flight time doesn't make you an expert. But you also know that you've found the thing that some people spend their whole lives looking for and never find. You found it at 3,500 feet in a 40-year-old airplane that burns 8 gallons an hour. And you are not letting go. The instrument-rated pilot. You go back to training because the private certificate isn't enough. You want to fly in clouds. You want to fly at night without worrying about getting trapped above an overcast layer. You want to be a real pilot, not a fair-weather hobbyist who cancels every time the ceiling drops below 3,000 feet. So you start instrument training, and it breaks you. Flying instruments means flying the airplane without looking outside. You wear a view-limiting device, a plastic visor that blocks everything except the instrument panel. Your entire world shrinks to 6 gauges: airspeed, attitude, altitude, turn coordinator, heading, vertical speed. You scan them in a pattern over and over. Your instructor talks to air traffic control while you try to hold a heading within 2 degrees and an altitude within 100 feet and a speed within 10 knots, while also configuring the navigation radios and briefing the approach plate and listening to the controller give you vectors that you need to read back correctly, while the airplane is bouncing through actual clouds and you can't see anything outside the window except gray. It is the hardest thing you have ever done. You fail constantly. You bust altitudes. You fly through headings. You get behind the airplane, which is a polite way of saying the airplane is flying you instead of the other way around. Your instructor saves you more times than you want to count. You study approach plates until the symbols swim in front of your eyes. You memorize minimums and missed approach procedures and holding patterns. You fly in actual instrument conditions, and the clouds swallow the airplane, and there is nothing outside, and you realize with complete clarity that if these instruments fail right now, you will die because you have no idea which way is up. You trust the gauges. You fly the procedures. You break out of the clouds at 400 feet and the runway is right in front of you, exactly where the approach said it would be, and you feel a satisfaction that has nothing to do with fun and everything to do with competence. You are becoming a pilot. The commercial pilot. You've hit 250 hours. You passed another check ride. You now hold a commercial pilot certificate, which means you are legally allowed to be paid to fly. The irony is that almost no one will pay you to fly with 250 hours. The certificate is a credential. The jobs that come with it are humble. You fly banner tow planes over beaches in the summer, dragging advertising banners through the sky at 500 foot while tourists look up. You fly skydivers to altitude in a beat-up Cessna 182 with the door removed, climbing to 10,000 feet, dumping a load of jumpers, diving back down, and doing it again 14 times a day. You fly pipeline patrol in a low-wing Piper, following oil pipelines across flat, empty land, looking for leaks and construction encroachment, alone for hours at a time with nothing but the engine noise and your own thoughts. The pay is criminal. You make $25,000 a year if you're lucky. You live with 3 roommates. You eat ramen. You are a professional pilot and you are below the poverty line. You do it because every hour in your logbook is a brick in the wall that will eventually get you to the airlines. That is the goal. That has always been the goal. The airlines are where the money is. The airlines are where the stability is. Everything before the airlines is the price of admission, and the price is steep, and it takes years to pay. The certified flight instructor. You can't build hours fast enough doing banner tow and skydiving runs. So you do what almost every aspiring airline pilot does. You become an instructor. You go back to the same kind of flight school where you started, the same faded carpet, the same vending machine, the same nervous students showing up for their first lesson. Except now you're in the right seat. You teach people to fly. You teach them the same things your instructor taught you. How to hold altitude, how to make a coordinated turn, how to recover from a stall, how to land without breaking the airplane. You say the same phrases your instructor said. Watch your airspeed. More right rudder. You're behind the airplane. You hear his voice coming out of your mouth, and you realize that this is how knowledge survives. It passes from one person to the next in a cramped cockpit at 3,000 feet. You are building hours. That is the real reason you are here. Every hour you teach is an hour in your logbook. You need 1,500 hours to qualify for the airlines. You have 400. The math is simple and depressing. At 80 hours a month, which is a busy month, it will take you over a year. Some months you fly 40 hours because students cancel, because weather cancels, because the airplane breaks. You track your hours obsessively. You update your logbook every night. You watch the number climb, and you calculate how many months are left. And you try not to think about the fact that you are 27 years old, and you make less money than a shift manager at a fast food restaurant. But something happens during this time that you don't expect. You become a better pilot. Not because you're flying challenging missions, because you're teaching. You have to explain things you've always done by instinct. You have to break down complex maneuvers into simple steps. You have to anticipate mistakes before they happen. You have to stay calm when a student does something terrifying. You develop patience you didn't know you had. You develop judgment you couldn't have built any other way. The hours are the currency, but the skill is the real payoff. The regional airline first officer. You hit 1,500 hours. You apply to regional airlines. Endeavor, Republic, SkyWest, PSA, Envoy. The names don't mean much to passengers because regional airlines operate under the brands of the majors. You fly a Delta Connection flight, or an American Eagle flight, or a United Express flight. But your paycheck comes from a company most people have never heard of. You go through training, ground school, simulator sessions, a check ride in a full-motion simulator that costs $20 million and makes you sweat through your shirt. You earn your type rating in a regional jet, the Embraer 175 or the CRJ 700 or whatever the airline flies. Your first day in the right seat of a real airliner, a jet with passengers behind you, is surreal. You've spent years in single-engine propeller planes. And now you're in a cockpit with glass displays and an autopilot and a thrust management system. And you're responsible for 76 lives in the cabin. The captain next to you has 12,000 hours. You have 1,500. He knows it. You know it. He watches you without watching you. He lets you fly and corrects you gently. And you learn more in the first month than you learned in the previous year. The schedule is brutal. You are on reserve, which means you sit in your crash-bad apartment waiting for the phone to ring. When it rings, you have 2 hours to get to the airport. You fly 4 legs a day sometimes. Short hops, 45 minutes up, 45 minutes down. You see the inside of 15 different airports in a week, and they all blur together. You are away from home 15 to 18 days a month. Your crash pad is a bedroom shared with 3 other pilots in a cheap apartment near the airport. You sleep in a twin bed next to a stranger who flies for a different airline and snores. The first-year pay at a regional is around $60,000 to $75,000. Better than instructing. Still not what your college roommate makes in finance. You remind yourself this is temporary. This is the last step. The major airline first officer. You get the call. Delta, United, American, Southwest, one of the big ones. You've been at the regional for 3 years, maybe 4. You have 5,000 hours. You passed the interview, the psychological evaluation, the background check, the simulator evaluation. You are hired at a major airline, and you feel like you've just been accepted into a different country, one with better pay and better schedules and better hotels and better everything. Training takes 3 months. A new aircraft type, the Boeing 737 or the Airbus A320 or whatever the airline assigned you based on seniority. And your seniority is the lowest in the company because you just got here. You are a new hire. You fly the least desirable routes on the least desirable schedules, red ice, holidays, back of the roster trips that senior pilots wouldn't touch. But the first-year pay at a major airline is around $100,000 to $120,000. By year 5, you're making $200,000 or more. The trajectory is real. The career you've been building for a decade is finally paying off in a way that feels proportional to what you sacrificed. You fly longer legs now, cross-country flights, international flights if you're on a wide body. You see cities you've never visited. You eat hotel breakfasts in Denver and Phoenix and Boston and Miami, and you start to lose track of where you woke up this morning. The job becomes routine, which sounds like a complaint, but isn't. Routine means safe. Routine means predictable. Routine means you can finally plan a life. The captain. You've been at the major airline for 8 years, maybe 12, depending on how fast the airline is growing and how many people above you retired. Seniority determines everything in the airlines. Your schedule, your aircraft, your base, your seat. You bid for captain and your seniority number is finally high enough. You go back to training. The upgrade from first officer to captain is the most significant transition in an airline pilot's career. You are no longer the person who assists. You are the person who decides. The left seat feels different. Not physically. Physically, it's the same cockpit, but the weight is different. Every decision is yours. When to divert, when to refuse a runway, when to call for an evacuation, when to tell 180 passengers that the flight is canceled because you don't like the way the weather looks, even though dispatch is telling you it's fine. Your name is on the flight. Your certificate is on the line. If something goes wrong, the investigation starts with you. You make $350,000 a year, maybe more depending on the aircraft and the airline. You fly wide-body jets across oceans. You eat dinner in London and breakfast in New York. You command a crew of 10 to 15 people, 2 pilots, 8 to 12 flight attendants, all of them looking to you when things get complicated. You've been flying for 20 years. You have 15,000 hours in your logbook. You've flown through thunderstorms and ice and wind shear and mechanical failures and medical emergencies and passengers who tried to open the cabin door at 35,000 feet. You've seen everything. And you know that the moment you think you've seen everything is the moment you become dangerous. You train new first officers now. Kids with 1,500 hours and wide eyes who remind you of yourself. You let them fly. You correct them gently. You tell them stories about your regional days, and they laugh. And you don't tell them about the parts that weren't funny. The loneliness, the poverty, the years of wondering if it would ever pay off. You just tell them it's worth it, because it was. The Check Airman. The airline asks you to become a Check Airman, a training captain. This is the highest operational role a line pilot can hold. You still fly the line, still carry passengers, still bid a schedule, but you also evaluate other pilots. You sit in the right seat while captains demonstrate their proficiency. You sit in the simulator while first officers attempt their upgrade to captain. You watch them fly, and you decide if they're ready, if they're safe, if they have the judgment to sit in the left seat with 200 people behind them. This is an enormous responsibility. You are the gatekeeper, the person who says yes, you're ready to be a captain, or no, you need more training. Saying no is harder than anyone outside aviation can understand. You are telling a pilot who has spent their entire adult life building toward this moment that they are not there yet. Some of them take it well, some of them don't. Some of them appeal. Some of them improve and pass the next time. Some of them never make it. You lose sleep over every failure because you know what it cost them. And you also know that putting an unready captain in charge of an airplane full of people costs something far worse. You also serve on safety committees. You review incidents and accidents. You study what went wrong, and you help design the training that prevents it from happening again. You sit in rooms with engineers and regulators and other Check Airmen, and you argue about procedures and standards. And you know that the boring, bureaucratic work you do in these rooms saves lives that will never know they were saved. You are 55 years old. You have 25,000 hours. You have landed on every continent except Antarctica. You have been struck by lightning twice. You have lost an engine over the Pacific and brought the airplane home. You don't talk about these things at dinner parties. You talk about the weather and the hotels and the layovers. The real stuff stays in the cockpit where it belongs. The retired captain. You fly your last flight on a Tuesday in October. The airline knows it's your last flight. The crew knows. Your family is in the cabin. The gate agent makes an announcement. The flight attendants say something over the PA. When you land and taxi to the gate, the fire trucks are waiting. They arch water over the airplane in a ceremonial salute. You shut down the engines for the last time. You sit in the cockpit for a moment after everyone has deplaned, and you look at the instruments and the switches and the view out the windshield, and you try to memorize it because you know you will never sit here again. You walk through the terminal in your uniform, and people you've never met shake your hand because someone told them it's your last day. You smile. You thank them. You feel something you can't quite name. Not sadness, not relief, something that lives between the two. You go home. The house is quiet. Your wife asks you how your last flight was, and you say it was good. And you sit down, and you don't know what to do with your hands. Tomorrow there is no alarm, no crew scheduling call, no pre-flight checklist, no runway, no rotation, no climb, no cruise. For the first time in 35 years, nobody needs you to take them anywhere. You have 30,000 hours in your logbook. You have flown 800 different airplanes. You have carried 1 million passengers to places they needed to be. Weddings, funerals, job interviews, first dates, last goodbyes. You were the invisible person in the cockpit who got them there safely. And they never knew your name. And that was fine. That was the job. You wake up early because your body doesn't know how to sleep past 4 a.m. anymore. You drink coffee on the porch and watch the sky. And you see a contrail at 35,000 feet, and you wonder where it's going. You know the route by the direction and the altitude, probably transatlantic, probably heading east. The captain up there is doing the job you used to do. They're monitoring the autopilot and reviewing the fuel numbers and talking to Gander Oceanic. And they have no idea that an old man on a porch in Virginia is watching them fly over and remembering what it felt like to be up there. Somewhere right now, a kid is sitting in the lobby of a small flight school at a small airport on the edge of town. The carpet is faded. The vending machine is half empty. A ceiling fan wobbles overhead. They're filling out forms and handing over a credit card, and their hands are shaking slightly because they know they're about to do the thing they've dreamed about since they were 6 years old, watching airplanes climb out of the airport near their house. They have no idea what the next 35 years will cost them. The money, the time, the missed birthdays, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the years of poverty wages, the slow grind from a single-engine trainer to a wide-body jet crossing oceans in the dark. They have no idea that this career will hollow them out and fill them back up with something they can never fully explain to anyone who hasn't lived it.